Hello everybody, I am Jarrett Ross, the GeneaVlogger, and welcome back to another Professional Genealogist Reacts. On today's video, I'll be reacting to I Took 2 DNA Tests, Did the Results Match by Brittany Vassar. Or Vassar, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I've never seen any of her videos before. This is a video with over 1 million views. I'm guessing, with a 2 DNA test kit thing, most people take it and they think, oh, I'm going to show how wrong these companies are. They can't even get it right each time. And the thing is that the way these companies are doing the estimates is different. They're using different studies. The way they define things is different. And in fact, I have a video that you can watch where I go into depth about how to measure the performance of each one of these different tests. Because if you test on Ancestry, 23andMe, MyHeritage, and Family Tree DNA, you're going to get all completely different results from each one. So I'm sure that's kind of what she was going for, was that whole thing of like, oh, I'm going to show that these aren't exactly the same, but in all honesty, that's kind of what you'd expect. So maybe it will be interesting. As usual, I'm hopeful she'll go into, genealogy, but most of these videos, they kind of just go into the ethnicity admixtures. She might go into like the medical stuff and all of that, but maybe talk about the genealogy and the genetic matches. But before we jump into the video, please be sure to give this a thumbs up. It really helps me out. And also subscribe and click that bell for notifications on new videos. I will also be putting up videos on Patreon early, so if you want to check out stuff before it's published on YouTube, be sure to join my Patreon. That also helps me out. And I have merch that you can check out at Teespring, which I'm going to be linking below. With all of that said, now let's go ahead and jump into this video.
Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here, welcome to my channel. My name is Brittany, and despite my channel name being Vassar Beauty, I haven't actually made a beauty video on this channel in well over 3 years. I cannot tell you how much anticipation I have for this. I will be revealing my results of not 1, but 2 DNA tests that I took. I have noticed both in real life and on YouTube so many people doing these various DNA tests. And I have been very skeptical of this because these tests aren't cheap. They're between $100 and $200. And I'm just wondering, how accurate are these results?
I had the feeling that was one of her points. How accurate are they? Well, let's see what she has to say when she gets results and she finds out that it's not going to be the same from each company.
Know if any of this is true. So that's why I decided to take 2 different tests so we could do a little compare and contrast. Now, granted, that's not necessarily going to tell us how accurate the results are, but if nothing else, I think it'll be interesting to see if the results are similar or not. Other issue that I have with these tests is I'm just personally a little wary of giving out my DNA and sending that out to a private company. There have been multiple high publicity security breaches happening recently. So there was the whole data hacking scandal with Cambridge Analytica. There was the Equifax data security breach, and I was affected by both of those. So I'm like,
let's see, this video is from 2018. So recently this year, there were a couple of security breaches on a couple of genetic genealogy databases. And so stuff like that is always a possibility. Whenever there's a database of information, there's a way that people can get into that database no matter where it is. So yeah, she's not talking about that, but I figured I would mention that genetic genealogy databases did have that this year.
Sending my DNA off to some company. Like, how do I know that there's not some evil genius out there who's going to break in, steal the DNA, create a clone army, and take over humanity? If nothing else, that would make a good movie. But
you never know.
Reservations in the name of making an interesting YouTube video, and I did go ahead and send in my DNA to 2 different companies. I chose the 2 most popular DNA analysis companies.
Ancestry and 23, my guess.
And 23andMe. And just as a disclaimer, I'm not affiliated with either of these companies in any capacity. I don't have an affiliate link. This is a totally unbiased review. As far as I know, my dad's side is mostly German and my mom's side is Cuban. Her parents.
If she has German, French, German, like that, trying to read either of those, if you have French ancestry or German ancestry, you are probably going to have results all over the place, because the population groups that make up France and Germany migrated all over Europe, and people all over from Europe migrated to those areas. So the mixing of populations is really intense in those areas.
Met in Cuba and moved over to the US. I've also been told many times that I look part Asian. It's probably because of my slightly hooded eyes. So who knows? So starting with Ancestry.com, you see here on the website, I pressed get started to see what kind of options they had available. And I just did this basic US discovery package. It looks like these higher level packages are just going to tell you more results of your ancestors and relatives.
So what she's looking at here is the membership to Ancestry, which has, I mean, it doesn't have a lot to do with your DNA. I mean, it does, because if you do a DNA test through Ancestry and you don't have one of their memberships, you're limited on different things that you can do. But what she's looking at here, this is just their different levels of membership. So US Discovery means you have access to the US records in their database. World Explorer means that you have access to their US and international records. And then the All Access gives you the Ancestry, the Fold3.com records, and newspapers.com. You can see it says basic. There's Newspapers Plus, which you end up having to pay more for, and like 90% of newspapers.com seems to be outside of the basic. But that's what she's looking at here. So what she started to say is incorrect. By doing the All Access or the World Explorer, they're not giving you more results from your DNA. They're giving you access to more records, so that when you do your genetic genealogy, you can do more work through Ancestry
that are global. So I just decided to do this $99 package. And as luck would have it, the day after purchasing this, I saw a nationwide commercial saying that the price had dropped to $49. So I would say if you are interested in doing this, wait until they go on sale. Then over on...
Yeah, they're always going on sale, especially if you're looking for the DNA tests. Wait until Mother's Day, Father's Day, Christmas, Thanksgiving, whatever. They're always putting these things on discount.
23andMe, they're also having a special for Mother's Day, which I did not get. They had some more options here. So I actually did this health and ancestry service. I paid full price, which was...
So that probably means that this video, she's going to go through all the health variants, which I personally find it so boring when they do that in these videos, because it doesn't really tell you much. It just tells you whether or not you have variants that, you know, they believe may be connected to certain traits or diseases or things like that. But usually what they'll say is not likely, slightly likely, very likely. You know, they never say for sure or no way. All they can say is, well, we didn't detect any of the variants that are associated with whatever this is, or we did detect some. But to truly find that kind of stuff out, you would need to go to a geneticist and get more specific type of testing done to find those variants.
$199 for this. And not only is this going to tell me my DNA results, it's also going to tell me some other fun facts like my genetic health risk reports, carrier status reports, all of these things that could be potentially traumatic to reveal on camera in front of thousands of people, but you know. I placed my order for both kits on the same night, and 23andMe's kit came 2 business days later, which I thought was really fast, and Ancestry's kit came 4 business days later. All right, so since we're here, I'm just gonna start with the Ancestry results.
Now she's cutting this screen into a third, and the part that's missing right in the middle, that's where your genetic matches are. And then over to the right, that's where what Through Lines is now. It used to be Ancestry Circles. This is back in 2018. So that was, I think that was when Through Lines was out. It might have been towards the end of Ancestry Circles, but hoping maybe she'll go into that stuff.
It has 3 options. So your DNA story, DNA matches, or DNA circles. So I'm going to start with our DNA story. And I have this here blocking because I want to look at the results line by line. Europe South, 46%. Southern Italy?
Yes, that's in Europe South.
What? Europe West, 14%. Iberian Peninsula, 10%. Great Britain, 8%. European Jewish, 7%. Hold on a second. What?
7% would be about equivalent to like a second great grandparent who is fully Jewish. Could be a third great grandparent or technically even a great grandparent, and just the recombination was really weird. But that's actually, if she didn't know she had Jewish ancestry and she did her genealogy, she could very likely figure out her most recent Jewish ancestor.
The heck? 7% European Jewish. Okay, let's see what else we have. Now that I'm sufficiently shook. Low confidence regions. 5%, which is Armenia, Georgia, Iran, Iraq. Okay. What? 3% Middle East. Less than 1% Native American, and it looks like that is the region that would include Cuba. So apparently I'm less than 1% Cuban. And then South Asia, it looks like India is circled here. That's less than 1%. So it seems here that my primary heritage is from southern Italy. So I'm extremely curious to see how this is going to compare to my 23andMe results. So my 23andMe results came around 3 weeks after I mailed in the kit. They did send me an email letting me know that my results are ready. So let's take a look. Let's see what they have to say. European, 97.1% European, 47.9% Italian. Okay. So Ancestry said 46% Italian. 23andMe is saying 47.9%, so basically 48% Italian. So that's pretty close. I had no idea, you guys, that I'm 50% Italian. Iberian, 10%, 10.5%, so that's the same, I believe. Balkan, 3.8%. French and German, British and Irish, 2.5%. This is pretty different because in my Ancestry, it says 8% Great Britain, but over here it says 2.5%. So that's
what's probably happening is in Ancestry, the French and German that 23andMe is reading, Ancestry may be reading that as British. So it's really not, I'm not too surprised.
That's a pretty significant difference. Eastern European, 1.9%. Scandinavian, 0.5%. Okay, this one says that I can't pronounce this, Ashkenazi Jewish, 0.3%. Okay, so according to Ancestry.com, I am 7% European Jewish. And according to 23andMe, I am only 0.3% this Ashkenazi Jewish. All right, so let's see. This one says that I'm
She skipped, you can see just at the top, she skipped the broadly stuff. And that stuff's really important because the broadlies are, you know, even though it didn't give you a specific country, it is giving you an area. And it just means that what they're reading there, they just can't tie that to a specific population group. And in fact, you can go in, and I think it's 23andMe that has the confidence slider. So as you slide the confidence from, you know, the least confident, which will give you the most specific, to the most confident, when it's the most confident, it's very broad. And that's why it's so confident, is because they're saying, well, you're definitely from these areas. But as you try to get more specific, especially defining it by the country lines that we know, the borders that we know today, just even 100 years ago, the borders were not the same as they are today.
8% Native American, 0.3% East Asia. This was not on my Ancestry at all. There was no percentage East Asian.
Yeah, but it had the less than 1%, and it's Native American and East Asian, and those can get mixed up. And, you know, since then, this test, she did these in 2018. I'd be very curious to see what the differences are now.
Sub-Saharan African here is 0.7%. So Ancestry did not have me at all Sub-Saharan African, and this 23andMe has me at 0.7%.
An extremely traced result.
Over to my health report.
Actually, I want to, oh, of course, she's going to go to her health report. She just showed the Broadleys.
But let's just jump
There we go. Okay. Broadly Southern European, 17.6%. That's a huge amount. I don't understand. I mean, I guess I get it when people do these tests and they don't really do genealogy or focus on history or anything like that. Like when they see those Broadleys, they're probably like, oh, well, that's not interesting. But for me, it's like, well, that's interesting. Broadly Southern European, that's probably some of that Italian. That could be, Mediterranean. It could actually be that what they're reading there is broadly Southern European, maybe being read on Ancestry as Jewish. And, that's one of the reasons why here she's getting 0.3% Ashkenazi Jewish, and on Ancestry it was like 7%. And it could be that in these Broadleys, it could even be from that broadly European or even broadly Northwestern European. In fact, in 23andMe, they define it as Ashkenazi Jewish, but they don't define any other Jewish sects. So there's, they don't have Sephardi Jewish or Mizrahi Jewish or anything like that. MyHeritage does try to do that, but they don't release a white paper, so it's hard to tell what their precision and call rates are, or their precision and recall rates. But with Ancestry, they will define it as European Jewish because they know that they're not defining it specifically as Ashkenazi. So just a little interesting aside, but I bet you anything that's where the reading from the Ancestry with the Ashkenazi Jewish or the European Jewish being so much higher, it's probably somewhere in these broadly European regions that she didn't mention.
Over to my health report.
So, but now we'll do the health reports, which are the least... Yeah, juicy info.
So because there could be some juicy info there.
Yeah, it's pretty much boring. Highly likely, not likely, somewhat likely.
More Neanderthal variants than 94%.
That's pretty high. I always find people with European ancestry usually have the higher Neanderthal variants.
What? What does that even mean? Oh my gosh. Genetic health risk report. I am slightly increased risk of whatever this is. I'm going to look into it. So
macular degeneration.
Looks like here, the only thing we have through all of these tests is whatever this is. All right, we're back. I've been looking at this, and I think what is throwing me off is that both of these companies break up the regions a little bit differently. But if you look at it on a broad scale, I would say the results are fairly similar. The biggest...
Boom. That's the thing about these tests. They're going to only be fairly similar. If you're using different studies, if you're defining the population groups differently, it's going to be coming out differently. And that's the main difference between these companies. A lot of them are doing work to make their, to get their readings to be more specific in certain areas, or to do specific studies to better the results for certain areas. So you will find that these companies will be different, but as long as it's generally about the same, that's basically what you're getting. Because in the end, all of these are just highly scientific estimates. There's a lot of basis behind it, but it's not for sure. And it also is not a complete showing of your ancestry. It's just a representation of the DNA that you inherited. So remember, you only inherit 50% from your mom and 50% of your dad. So 50% of what you're getting from your mom is only being represented, or 50%, so the 50% that you get from your mom is being represented here, but the 50% that you're not getting from her is not going to show up. And same thing for your dad's side. And then if you think about it further, your parents are only getting 50% from each of their parents. So you're only getting a small percentage of theirs. So when you take these tests, you may have ancestry that you could even find genealogically and, prove fairly well, and then do a DNA test and you don't have any representation of that in your DNA. Especially if you get back to like a third great grandparent, fourth, or further.
Buckets are the same. So the around 50% Italian and this Iberian Peninsula being 10%. That matched up. Where there were some significant differences here is in this Great Britain on Ancestry says I'm 8.
Yeah, I think that's because, like I said, the Great Britain 8%, that's because it's probably reading that French and German as Great Britain. And it's also likely because with her 23andMe, which she's blocking once again the broadly European parts, it's probably part of those as well.
8%, which is fairly significant, whereas on 23andMe, only 2.5% British and Irish. And then the biggest disparity that is throwing me off the most is this European Jewish. When I look into it here, this Ashkenazi Jewish is European Jewish. So according to Ancestry.com, I am 7% Ashkenazi Jewish, whereas on 23andMe, it's only 0.3%.
I will say that is quite an interesting difference in the 7% to 0.3%. And it really does make me wonder, what are the newer results saying, the current results today, because they're probably very different. And on top of that, it may explain where some of the differences are coming from, because it might be that now her ancestry European Jewish is less, or it could be that her 23andMe Ashkenazi Jewish is now more, because maybe some of that broadly Southern European, they figured out, oh, well, actually, these are related to Jewish populations, and then they define that as Jewish population. So
that's a pretty big disparity. So I feel like after doing this, I'm left with more questions than answers. I want to dive in.
You got to do your genealogy to answer the questions.
I will leave it down in the description box after I have some more time to process this and look into it. Am I glad I did this? Yes, I think it's really interesting. Do I feel like it was worth the price I paid for this information? Probably not. I mean, that was pretty steep. It was $300 total for all of this. Again, I would recommend waiting for these to go on sale if you are interested in doing them yourself.
All right, that was a pretty good video. She understood that these tests were broadly about the same, and so I would say that her statement that it really wasn't worth it for her kind of makes sense, because if you're just doing it for that ethnicity admixture and you already have a kind of general idea of your ancestry and you aren't interested in doing genealogy, it may not be worth it. I wouldn't necessarily define these as steep. I mean, it's not cheap necessarily, but most of these DNA tests nowadays, at least, are, $100 or less, often on sale for way less. Even, I think she mentioned one of them was on sale for $49 at one point. But if you're trying to do your genealogy, if you're trying to figure out your family history, if you're adopted and you're trying to figure out who your family is, or if there's just a mystery in your family and you think DNA may help, that's where it really becomes worth it. But unfortunately, a lot of people do take these tests just to do the ethnicity admixture, and even more unfortunately, then they never look at it again, and that causes a lot of problems for the users who do the genealogy, because then they'll go on to the database, find these people as close matches, try to reach out to them, and because they're not going on the database ever again, they don't get those messages, and then it's kind of a lost match. Thank you so much for checking out this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. You can also click right about here if you'd like to subscribe. It's completely free to do so. And you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at GeneaVlogger. I'm the GeneaVlogger. See you in my next video.